Welcome back. Let's now return to our end-of-year review on sports, and we are joined by sports journalist Mr. Deji Omotoyinbo. It's great to have you on the News at 10.
Good to be here anyway.
So let's talk about 2021 and sports sector. How would you rate Nigerian sports in the past year?
On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe somewhere between 5 and 6. We could have done so much better, but you know, COVID had a debilitating effect on most industries, particularly sports. So a lot of athletes could not train when they needed to. So preparations were hampered for a lot of competition. So you could say that that was a mitigating factor. But the issue with us is that we never tend to plan properly, and we tend to leave things till the very last minute. So we have great potential, but we never maximize that potential because I think our preparations are always shoddy and maybe short. We do not do long term. And for success in sports, you have to have a vision, a long-term plan to get results. There are no shortcuts.
Now, it's interesting you talked about preparations for major international competitions, which was a big issue, no thanks to the COVID pandemic. And we're still in the pandemic, as it were. But how can this be addressed, in 2022?
It's long-term planning. I mean, we know the events that are coming. I mean, these events don't just spring up on us. We know the timetable is always known, like at least, in some cases, 2-3 years ahead. So we always tend to relax and wake up, and when it is a few weeks to the tournament or a few months to the event, we start rushing. I mean, it's never going to work. I always say that there's no shortcuts to success in life and in sport. You've got to work for it. You've got to work long term. You have to have a long-term plan. And we never want to do long term. And I think that's one of the main reasons we are not realizing our full potential in sports, because it's all about planning for the long haul. You have to do that. If you don't do that, and then we know Commonwealth Games are coming. I hope I'm not right. I hope I'm wrong. But you find out that 4 weeks to the games, everybody starts rushing. I mean, we know these things are coming. So why do we wait till the very last minute before we start getting things in place? And in the question of funding, I don't know how or why it's so difficult to always get monies out for events that we know are coming up. So that's another factor that mitigates against good performance in sports. The potentials are there. There's a lot of promise, but if you do not get the planning and administrative area right, we will continue to struggle.
So let's talk about the grassroots now, because, of course, we had the Olympics last year. It didn't look as if we were doing too well. So how do we develop sports at the grassroots?
I think the schools have a lot to do with that. Sport has to go back to the schools. When we were growing up, school sports was massive, was huge. A lot of talents were developed and discovered and developed from there. And you have a situation now where you have schools that don't even have a sports program, that probably don't even have a sports field, which is ridiculous, really. So we need to get back, create platforms at that grassroots level for various sports. And those platforms are, that's where you throw up youngsters, new talents, and you develop them from there. But I do know that you have to spread the dragnet where there's some kids who are not in school, but the school gives you a framework. It gives you a talent pool where you can choose from. So school sports, we have to go back there, because it was our strength in the past, and it was where we discovered a whole lot of legends of Nigerian sports, and we have to get back to that.
Interesting one there. There's actually one more, but very quickly. I mean, financial autonomy for sports administrations. What's your take on that? Very quickly.
It's the ideal, but in our situation, it's not realistic. Most of those sports are amateur sports. They depend on government for infrastructure, for funding. They can't survive on their own. So that's the idea. Maybe some professionals, so a few sports might be able to do that, but generally, it's almost impossible for some sports to survive without government funding.
We'll leave it at that. Deji Omotoyinbo, a renowned sports journalist, thank you for your thoughts on the News at 10.
My pleasure to be here.